Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Weekly Waypoint. Today we are playing Final Fantasy XIV. That's right, we're doing the MMO dungeon running variant of the Weekly Waypoint this week. If you're worried about spoilers, we run two dungeons in this video. The first is this dungeon, which is one of the very first dungeons you ever do, no spoilers here. And the second one is the Keeper of the Lake, which is a level 50 dungeon that takes place during a Realm Reborn's patch content. And I would say, unless you're like about to get to that point and you're in the middle of that particular story, there's no spoilers there. If you do happen to be playing through a Realm Reborn patch content right now, maybe just look away or like play the audio in another tab or something when we do that dungeon, but it's really nothing explicit, don't worry. But yeah, I would love to do more Final Fantasy XIV like daily roulettes or duty roulettes as background footage for the Weekly Waypoint, but unfortunately the dungeons, well, fortunately for if you're actually playing the game, but for background footage, unfortunately, the dungeons are very much tied in with the narrative pretty heavily throughout the stories, so it's kind of hard to just like throw them on in the background. But anyway, as you can see, I'm playing Samurai today. I really enjoy Samurai. I think this is the next job that I want to get leveled to max. And yeah, I have such a good time playing this class. It's just so satisfying. Not so much in a level 19 dungeon where most of your abilities are locked off, but you know, when it's higher level, sure. While we're talking about MMOs, World of Warcraft Midnight comes out tonight at midnight. Funny how that works, isn't it? Actually, I haven't verified that. It might be 1 AM. Let me go check. Oh, it's at 11 PM GMT. Even better. Okay, so yeah, World of Warcraft Midnight releases tonight, and it's already out in early access, and it's kind of wild that, you know, I'm not playing it in early access. I didn't buy a heroic edition of the game. I did for Dragonflight, and I did for The War Within. So what does that say? Does that mean I'm disillusioned with the World of Warcraft franchise, and I think Midnight's going to be terrible, and I don't care anymore? No, I think it'll be pretty good. But I think I'm just not in the mood for WoW right now. And it's interesting because I've been there for every expansion launch since I started playing properly in Mists, and it feels very weird to be at a place where I'm like, yeah, I don't know if I'm actually going to bother to resubscribe to play it on launch tonight. I probably will, but I don't know. I'm thinking about just giving it a miss and playing it at a later date when I want to go check it out. I'm still undecided. And I think back to Dragonflight and when that came out, and I was probably at one of my most disillusioned at World of Warcraft at that point, because obviously it was post Shadowlands, although I did enjoy some of my time in Zereth Mortis, which was the final patch of that expansion. But I remember playing through Dragonflight and everyone's going, yeah, this feels like a return to form, this is in a really good place now, and the leveling experience is really fun. And I remember playing through the leveling experience and just not enjoying it that much, and having issues with the level scaling and feeling like I was getting a lot weaker as I leveled up, and I was going from being able to like pull a bunch of enemies and burst them all down to like fighting for my life if I had to fight more than one enemy at a time, which can be fun gameplay when you're expecting it, like playing WoW Classic. Not so much when it feels like your power is being taken away from you and you just want to see what's going on with the story of an expansion as you're leveling through it. And this was not a common complaint I heard. I felt like I was, you know, having a worse experience than most people were. And I had a similar thing during the final patch of The War Within, or the final major patch of The War Within. Not like in terms of power loss or anything like that, but just people seem to really enjoy the it's the Sands of Koresh, I think it's called, or something like that, where we're going to the homeland of the Ethereals, which is something which it's like a wish list item for like a place to go in WoW, right? And people seem to really enjoy their time there and have a great time with it. And I just found it to be, you know, I found the gameplay experience to be kind of just normal / mid. I found the story to be you know, contradictory to some of the other story they'd put out recently regarding some of the lore behind how the Ethereals got to be the way they were and stuff like that. And some of the actual storytelling within the patch itself, even outside of that, was just pretty, you know, tame, pretty timid, pretty, you know, there were moments which I just thought were kind of clunky and not done well, and it just didn't vibe with me the way it seemed to vibe with everyone else. And I think when I look at Dragonflight and when I look at that patch for The War Within, my biggest mistake was going, oh, it's World of Warcraft time, it's time to go over here and play it because there's a new expansion or a new patch out, even though I'm not necessarily in the mood for World of Warcraft right now. And I think when you're not in the mood to play WoW and you kind of like I never felt like I was making myself play it, but like you play it based on its terms instead of your own, I think you're more likely to have a negative experience, and the negatives are more likely to stand out to you as something like really bad. When if you're actually in the mood for the game at the time, you might look upon it more favorably. It might not bother you as much. And so I'm hesitant to play World of Warcraft Midnight at launch tonight because I'm not in a World of Warcraft mood right now. And if I do that, I might have that same problem of like finding issues to be bigger than they actually are and just not being as engaged as I expect to be and feeling this weird disconnect with the game itself. And I don't want that. So yeah, I am kind of considering streaming it, which would be a bit of a different experience. The last time I streamed a World of Warcraft expansion launch was Battle for Azeroth. So maybe I'll do that. I can see some merit in doing that as an experience. Maybe not committing to streaming the entire like leveling experience, but like definitely my first impressions because I do want to see Quel'Thalas. So yeah, as I've said, I'm conflicted. Oh, and I should probably mention, I've just realized I'm not playing Final Fantasy XIV for the gameplay today just because World of Warcraft Midnight is out in early access and I'm going, I don't need to play that game, I can play this one instead. That's not what I'm doing. I just felt like playing Final Fantasy XIV. But yeah, someone who kind of used to measure the passage of time in World of Warcraft expansions and would fairly frequently go back, and if there was a new expansion coming out, I would go back and look at the weekly waypoint for, the time before the previous expansion to see like what my hopes were and stuff like that. I thought it was worth mentioning, and who knows, maybe when I do an episode before The Last Titan comes out, it'll be completely different and I'll be on board. It's less of like a quality of the game thing I'm realizing and more of just like what my particular fixation is at that time thing. And sure, it used to be World of Warcraft all the time, and now it's not, and is there something to be said about the quality of a game for that? I actually think that all my fixations rotate more quickly than they used to, and it's more to do with me. But there's also something to be said for how well have Blizzard stoked my interest in WoW Midnight in recent times, and it's interesting that I was more excited for Midnight in the BlizzCon when they announced it, alongside War Within and The Last Titan, than I am now, and I think maybe part of that is that they put a whole bunch of marketing into the housing feature coming out, which I was also more excited for than Midnight in general, so it's probably a culmination of all that stuff. Speaking of fixation cycles though, if you've been following the channel this week, you will no doubt be aware that I am currently on my Poke bullshit. Wait, that doesn't sound right. I'm big into Pokemon right now, and I was before the presents and the release of FireRed and Leaf Green, which I'll talk about in just a second, but that definitely helped. I would say this has been slowly building ever since I got my Switch 2, probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago now. But I've been spending a decent amount of time in Pokemon Violet because, hey, it's a functioning Pokemon game on the Switch 2, which is wild. And I've reached the post-game, and I've been figuring out how, like, the Mighty Mark raids work and stuff like that, and I've been doing the, like, trainer battles. I think the only thing in the Pokemon Violet Vanilla post-game that I haven't done yet is track down the legendaries, and that's partially because I don't really know how. And that's also partially because I already have the shiny forms of them via a mystery gift event that Game Freak did a little while ago, so I don't feel a huge amount of motivation to go and get them, even though I probably should. But realizing I wanted more Pokemon Violet gameplay, I decided to pick up the Hidden Treasure of Area Zero DLC, and I have since begun the Teal Mask, which takes us to the, I guess, sub-zone, mini-zone, micro-zone of Kitakami. It's not really a micro-zone, it's not that small. But Kitakami is an island located near Unova, so there's a lot of Gen 5 references there that I'm mostly going over my head because I'm not a big Gen 5 guy. But it's really fun because it's more of like a traditional Japanese kind of an area, and I'm really enjoying the difference in locale. I enjoyed Paldea, but I definitely, personally, subjectively speaking, am more interested in like a Japanese location, which I would argue we've yet to really see in one of these games, at least in like a modern day time. I guess Legends Arceus kind of explored that a bit in the past. I haven't got all that far through it yet, by the way. I'm still like taking selfies at the signposts or whatever, which is a very early quest. And that's mostly because I've just been running around catching all the new Pokemon, and I've got to say, I've said it before, I'll say it again, the thing that Pokemon Violet does the best in terms of iterating upon something that previous games already did and making it actually interesting is the Pokédex. The way that they handle just completing the Pokedex, and like when you get a new entry, like the visuals of putting the new entry as like a folder on a shelf next to all the others is so satisfying, and I can't believe that they've never put this much effort into Pokedex presentation before, given how vital of an element it is in the series as a whole. And so having a whole new one of those to fill out has been pretty gratifying. Oh, I should have mentioned as well before I got to talking about the DLC, I was spending a decent chunk of time filling out my Paldea Pokedex as well. So yeah, I've been enjoying that. And then of course the Pokemon FireRed and Leaf Green games released on Pokemon Day on the eShop, and I picked up FireRed and I've been playing through that, and I actually have more to say about that than I thought I would, because I've been saying like, yeah, I've played through this game 1,000 times, I'm very familiar with it, I'm not exactly estranged from it, but it's nice to have an official version of it, and I'll definitely pick it up and play it. Actually, I'm not as familiar with it as I thought, or maybe I hadn't played it as recently as I thought, and I've been more, you know, like, you know when a game series iterates quietly on things over time, like little minor adjustments over many entries, and when you go back and play one of the older titles and you're like, oh right, this was like this, I forgot that we had to deal with this back in the day and stuff like that. Yeah, that's the experience I've been having playing through Pokemon FireRed. Mostly it's been the lack of XP share adjustment. I've never been one of those people who hates the XP share from Pokemon X onwards. Yes, it makes the series too easy maybe, but it also is less of a headache. But I also never hated the way it was before. However, I will say, playing through it now, without the XP share, it was a little bit of an adjustment. And one of the things I had difficulty with was because I'm trying to catch them all, and I'll get to talking about that in a bit as well. From very early on, I had a team of 6 Pokemon, and I was really struggling to keep them leveled, especially since I've noticed the balancing in this game is a little different to what I'm used to, in that wild Pokemon encounters are usually like 10 to 15 levels lower than like the trainers around the area and stuff demand of you. So you can't just go and catch a Pokemon that's around the same level as the battles you're going to face. You catch a Pokemon and then you have to grind for ages to level it up. Unless you do what the sane person probably does, which is not try and have a full team of 6 right at the very start. Because I was going, why am I having so much difficulty keeping all of these Pokemon at a similar level? And you know, I was doing like switch training, and I was trying to make sure that I was focusing a different Pokemon as the head of my party at various different times and stuff, but still my Squirtle was getting ahead in levels of everyone else. And I realized it was because trying to level up 6 Pokemon simultaneously from the very start of a game means that you're going to need more XP in general to keep 6 Pokemon leveled than you would for like 1, 2, or 3, right? And just the way that the game is balanced, especially in the early game, I would say pre-Cerulean City, yeah, it's a little tough to keep Pokemon leveled in a even and I guess efficient manner. And so eventually what I did is I just took the Pokemon who were lagging behind in levels, I stuffed them in a box, and I just kept the ones with me that were doing okay. And so far I've just picked up the 5th member of my team, and I've just done the 4th gym. I guess I should say, because technically you can do gyms out of order, I think. I've done the, is it Saffron City? The one with Erica, the grass type gym leader in there. And I will say from, I guess, the electric gym onwards, with the SSN and everything, I've had a much better time of keeping my team at an even level, and I've got a much more well-rounded team in terms of type coverage and stuff like that, and I'm really getting into the flow of the game. I think maybe this is just me talking as someone who's played through this game too many times, but I do think the beginning of Pokemon FireRed and Leaf Green can be a little boring and a little bit of a slog. I think it's also balanced a bit weirdly and structured a bit weirdly. For instance, when you leave Mount Moon, there's like a ledge and you jump down to Cerulean City where Misty is. And if you do that too early, I've done this before in the past without leveling up your Pokemon very much. I guess this probably happened because I kept fleeing from battles in Mount Moon or something. Then you will have a bad time because you can never go back. And there's only one patch of tall grass before Cerulean City that you can access, and it's full of like level 10s. So yeah, it's a little weird. It's a little rough in that way, I would say, but the further through the game you get, the more it really comes together, or at least in my experience this time around, and I'm having a really good time. And for anyone wondering, my current team is a War Turtle named Artillery, a Fearow named Snoot, a Gloom named Plume, a Dog Trio named Burrow, spelled a little different, and I just picked up my Eevee, who I evolved into a Flareon called Foof, because his back sprite is very foofy. Now, there's something I really want to do with Pokemon, and part of that is to do with how I've reorganized my home boxes. And I did a whole video on this, so I'm going to try and be brief about this for those of you who didn't watch it, but I've reorganized my Pokemon home boxes because previously I just had it by national dex numbering. I realized that's not really cutting it for me. It's a little boring and it doesn't account for doubles and everything, and it just feels cluttered and impersonal. And so instead I've decided to order Pokemon by region, and I'll have like a favorites box for each region / game, and then I'll have like, just the rest of them. And I've also got specific shiny boxes for each region as well. And what I've realized is a really attractive thing for me is, in terms of gameplay, I've never really gotten into shiny hunting, although I've always sort of wanted to. But one of the things that's always held me back is, in more recent games, it feels like there's always a most efficient way to shiny hunt. As in, like, you need the shiny charm, but to get the shiny charm you need to complete the Pokedex. But I don't want to go and try and complete the Pokedex right now. I want to shiny hunt a specific Pokemon. That's a different activity that I'm excited to do. But I can't get past the feeling of I'm doing it wrong if I do it without the shiny charm, right? I'm literally, like, making the odds so much worse by not getting that first. At the same time, there's this whole conversation about how much easier shinies are to get in modern games, especially in, like, Pokemon Legends CA and stuff like that. And I don't dislike that. I like that you can hear the shiny noise and turn around and see a shiny roaming Pokemon and it won't flee, or it'll flee if you do it wrong, but it won't like despawn anymore in ZA and stuff like that. I like all of that. But I do also think that, I wouldn't say it devalues older shinies, but it definitely makes it feel like, well, if I want to go and shiny hunt in FireRed and Leaf Green because I want to have that experience of doing that in those games, then again I'm being super inefficient about it, because it would be much easier to get a shiny Caterpie in Pokemon Legends CA, for instance, assuming that those are in that game. I don't remember off the top of my head. But then I realised that when you catch a Pokemon, it tells you what game you caught it in, it tells you what region it's from, right? And so there's value to having a shiny Pokemon caught in an older game, even if it's not immediately apparent to, like, if you throw it out in a Terra raid and someone sees you have a shiny Pokemon. I would argue there's not really all that much special about seeing a shiny Pokemon in a Terra raid. It feels like every Terra raid I go into, you see a shiny Pokemon. But still, it's more of like a personal collection kind of a thing. And I really like the idea of having a box for shinies specifically from FireRed and Leaf Green that I can point to and go, yeah, I got this shiny over here, and I really value that Pokemon, and it has a kind of identity I assign to it because of that, and I remember catching it over there, as opposed to Pokemon Go, where, like, I caught, like, 17 shiny Shinx in a community day or something, you know what I mean? I still want a shiny Shinx I come across in Brilliant Diamond to have value, and I can do that in my mind by assigning it as a shiny Shinx from Brilliant Diamond instead of just my 18th shiny Shinx. So yeah, that's how shifting the way I think about shiny hunting has really excited me. And I haven't started yet, but I'm tempted to try and get the Porygon from the Game Corner in Pokemon FireRed. I'm tempted to soft reset shiny hunt that, because that sounds like fun. And to be clear, shiny hunting in FireRed and Leaf Green is not easy. It's going to take a while. People talk about certain shiny hunts taking them tens if not hundreds of hours, and I don't know if my attention span is going to keep up for that long, but I very much view it in the same way as I view wanting to get a 99 skill in RuneScape or something, right? It's a long-term project. And just like that yields a skill cape at the end, which is a fun cosmetic thing for my account, this will yield a shiny Pokemon at the end, which I will undoubtedly feel fondly towards because of how I got it and where I got it and the story behind getting it. Hell, maybe I'll even name it after the amount of hours it took to get it or something, just so people can easily see, like, oh, that Porygon's called 154 hours. It must have taken this guy 154 hours to get it. Although maybe that's a bit impersonal, I don't know. Oh, I should also mention that before Pokemon Day and the release of FireRed, I was playing Brilliant Diamond because I've still never finished that game. And I was hungry for that more traditional Pokemon experience that was, I was anticipating with the re-release of FireRed. And I was not the only person I saw doing this on my friends list, so I think that was a pretty common sentiment. And I got up to the Elite Four, and I got all the way up to the champion, Cynthia, and she wrecked me twice. Her Garchomp is no joke, and I had a lot of fun doing that, but I am now out of money to buy new Max Survives, and it's been so long since the Elite Four has been a challenging experience that I'm actually just kind of delighted. And I still want to finish that game because, again, I want to get into like the end game of Brilliant Diamond and maybe look into how shiny hunting works in that game. But what I've been doing is I've been spending some time in the Grand Underground catching Gravelers and Machoaks, and I've been wonder trading them away just because then people can get the trade evolutions for them, which I think is pretty fun. And also I've been wanting to see what I can get back from the wonder trades, and so far nothing particularly interesting or special, but it's also worth doing because I know if you get a foreign language Pokemon, that increases the odds of hatching a shiny Pokemon from an egg. So I've been starting to collect foreign language Pokemon from trades, which is another fun thing. So yeah, if you couldn't tell, my Pokemon fixation is at an all-time high, and I'm interacting with the franchise on a level that I've not really done before, or that I rarely do, I suppose I should say. I also, just before the end of this episode, want to mention that I finished watching the Fallout series this week, and I've got a whole video all about that over on Kritigri Talk Stories, but that inevitably led me to reinstalling Fallout 4, a game I've never spent more than a few hours with. Mostly because I find post-apocalyptic settings a little bleak. I've talked about that before. So this is my third attempt to get into Fallout 4. And so far I've got right up to the point that I always get to, which is exiting the vault, going to Concord, finding Preston Harvey, returning to Sanctuary, and that's it. I plan to play more today so that I can finally see more of the world of Fallout 4. But I've been playing some Fallout 76, as I've mentioned with Reese, and I've been enjoying that world. My main issue with it is I just get hit with these insane loading screens. I think because I'm running it off of an external hard drive, or sorry, an external SSD. I'm not crazy. But Fallout 4 doesn't have that problem, and I've been very curious about it because it's closer in time period to the show. And I will say, so far, I'm realizing it might not be a Fallout problem, it might be a Fallout 4 problem, because the reason I stopped playing it last night when I got to the same point I always get to is because I did get to a point where I was like, man, this setting is kind of getting me down, I'm not gonna lie. My thing about post-apocalyptic environments as like a world to explore and how that affects my mood, it is still thoroughly an issue, but I think it's going to be something I continue to try and push against because I really want to explore the world of Fallout. I'm having such a good time with that world and its lore and stuff like that. And honestly, maybe it's just the point in the story that I'm at. I don't really know too many people in the world at this point. I don't have a sense of the wider world. All I really know is this small cast of characters and this small location within the game. So maybe when I get further into it, it will feel more alive and less bleak, because I've realized I don't really get that feeling as badly from Fallout 76. I have done, but not as badly. Oh, you might have wondered why I didn't mention Pokopia in my talk about Pokemon this week. Am I gonna get Pokopia? No. I want to. I really want to, but it's expensive. And I've already bought the Violet DLC and Pokemon FireRed this month, so it's gonna have to wait, I'm afraid. But I'm glad to see it's being well received. That's always nice for a Pokemon game. But yeah, that's just about gonna do it for this episode of the Weekly Waypoint. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it. And, you know, I assume we're gonna take down this boss any second now. Hurry up, Tamaris. There we go. Okay. Leave a like if you like the video. Subscribe for more. And I will catch you in whatever I make next.